Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talk Sex podcast with me, Mor Yelvington, your host. I'm so excited that you are here with us today because we have a very heart-opening interview. I have the beautiful Beth here with me. I'm going to introduce her in a minute, but this conversation is going to be a little different than our usual sex bedroom talk. And I would love for you to just tune in and listen. The story is different, but I think it will find pieces of you in it and places where you can find yourself. So grab a drink, maybe some tea, and come listen to this talk. So, hi, Beth. I'm so honored that you're here with me today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
How about you introduce yourself and let our listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay. So, first of all, I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest and I am a mother. I have 5 children, four living. Um, and I have been married. I was married for 21 years and I am now divorced and a single mother. My two youngest children are 14 and 11. And I work with women who have been cheated on by their husband.
Wow. So maybe you can dive a little bit into all of that. How did you get to doing that?
How did I get here? Well, it was a
What's the journey?
21-year journey.
Yeah.
Um, so I got married at 20 years old and immediately moved across the country. I'm actually born and raised in Ohio, and I moved to Washington State. I've lived here for 24 years now. On my wedding night, he did his thing. He rolled over and he went to sleep. He masturbated in front of me on our honeymoon. And then a month after we were married, he raped me. And he raped me multiple times over the marriage. And I didn't know then, 24 years ago was 2000, and internet, personal computers and internet, that was all like kind of new. And we didn't know exactly what was hidden on the internet. And so my family, my parents and I, we didn't know to ask questions. We didn't know that we needed to ask, do you look at pornography? How long have you looked at pornography? Um, so I didn't know that I married a pornography addict. He had looked at it since he was 12 years old. I met him when we were 18.
Wow. So did you know for the 20 years of marriage that what was going on is not okay? Was that your first like sexual interaction with him?
Yes, I was a virgin when we got married. Um, and I knew the wedding night was not okay. Obviously, the next morning I sat there trying to eat breakfast, holding back tears, swallowing food past a lump in my throat, thinking I'm stuck because I was raised in a conservative Christian home where I was taught that divorce is wrong. You
Mm.
don't get divorced. And if you do get divorced, you don't get remarried. And so I'm thinking, I'm stuck. I can never be free of this. Um, and then when he masturbated in front of me, I didn't actually have the word masturbation until the last 10 years. I knew what he did, um, how it made me feel was, and it was this feeling of really ick and um, selfishness and like, what in the world? I didn't even know people did this, let alone my brand new husband on our honeymoon.
Right.
Um, and then when he raped me, yes, I knew that was wrong. But again, I'm taught that divorce is wrong. And not only that, but he twisted scripture and told me that he owns my body, so he can do whatever he wants. And I didn't agree, obviously, but I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know the resources that were available to me. And I didn't know that in some states, marital rape is actually something that can be prosecuted. And so
Yeah.
I didn't know all these things 24 years ago.
Right. So when did you wake up, quote unquote, and realize, okay, this is not good. It's not working for me. I mean, you have four children, right? How did you get to that point when you're like, I'm done with this?
So in the betrayal trauma world, sexual betrayal trauma world, there's a term called disclosure
Okay.
and or discovery. Um, I actually endured trickle disclosure. So he came to me 2 years into our marriage and said he looked at pornography. And I was the dutiful little Christian wife and I forgave and life went on. Because again, I didn't know, this is still 2002, 2003. I still don't know exactly what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And
And you're so young.
young, yep. And I have two babies. I have two children. And well, I had one children when he confessed the first time, or one child when he confessed the first time. Um, and he came to me a couple of years later and confessed that he was still looking at pornography. And we were both unhappy with our sex life because when you're raped, why do you want to be with your rapist? Why would you want to be sexually intimate with your rapist? And he was unhappy because I didn't want to have sex.
Yeah, of course.
And so we went to a minister for help. Don't go to the ministry, go to a trained therapist. And I recommend a certified sex addiction therapist, CSAT. They are trained in sex addiction. And even if you're not the one with the sex addiction, you're married to that, go to them because they know how the sex addict mind works and they can work with you as the spouse or partner of that sex addict. So we went to the minister and I was basically told have more sex.
Did you tell him what was going on?
Yeah, my former husband admitted in that meeting that he looked at pornography since he was 12 years old. But it was my fault that he looked at pornography
Because you won't have sex with him.
because I won't have sex with him.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what did you do? So you go to the people that you respect the most, and they just tell you, nope, just have more sex.
Mhm.
Now what? I can't even imagine what you felt in that moment.
Well, for starters, all I heard at that moment was that it was my fault that he was looking at pornography. So I actually took that on for several years until the Lord one day was like, lightning bolt, Beth. He's looked at pornography since he was 12 years old. This is not your fault.
Right,
And
right.
that weight fell off of me. And I was like, 12 to 18 is 6 years. No, this is not my fault. And I'm not going to take responsibility for it any longer.
Good.
Um, and in case anyone has never heard of the term victim shaming, that was victim shaming. What was done to me was victim shaming, telling me
100%.
that I needed to just have more sex. That doesn't work. For starters, it doesn't work. Secondly, it's piling shame and guilt on someone that it should not be piled onto. And third, why was he not called out for looking at pornography?
Right. Or for raping you.
Well, we didn't disclose that portion of it.
Oh,
Yeah, that was not disclosed. I didn't actually start talking about that until more recent years, like um, probably in the last 5, almost 6 years, that I started talking about that.
were you aware? But you were aware it wasn't okay.
Yes, I was very aware. I had tried to fight him off, and because I told him no, wasn't interested, and he went ahead and raped me. Took what he wanted, and I had tried to fight him off, but I wasn't big enough to fight him off, and so I just gave up. And knowing that anytime I said no, that was probably what was going to happen, but also at the same time trying to honor myself by saying no because that's not something that I want. I don't feel safe. I'm not safe. Knowing that every time I said no, there was the potential that I would be raped.
Yeah. Wow. I can't even imagine. So here you are, divorced, and talking about this. So what changed? You went to the ministry and that didn't work out. So then what?
Well, it all began in 2015. I woke up one morning and I rolled over and I said, "Are you still looking at pornography?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "You need to move out." I don't know what switched. I don't know. Like, I can't tell you why I did that. I just know I woke up. I asked. He said, "Yes." I said, "You need to move out." Um, that led to a whole series of things that happened that led to my divorce. That was like my first time to really stand up for myself and my children. Because not only was he sexually abusive to me, but he was physically abusive to the children. There was
Oh,
obviously there was spiritual abuse. He twisted scripture. There was religious abuse because we went to the minister and I was just told to have more sex. Um, so there was this uh, mental abuse and emotional abuse towards me and our children. And I really can't tell you what happened, but I know I said, "You need to move out." He didn't take me serious until a few days later. I was like, "So, do you have somewhere else you're going to live?" And he's like, "No." I said, "I was serious. You need to move out." And so he got somewhere else to move out to live, but I wasn't supported in my asking him to move out. Um, Locally, my family supported me. My family is not local to me in like local to me as in lives in the same area I do. They're still in Washington State, but they're not in the same area I am. They live 4 hours from me. So there wasn't a lot that they could do to support me. But the fellowship where we fellowshipped, I was told, "You're harming the fellowship because you won't let your husband live with you. You're harming your children because they need their father." And so 3 to 5 months, something like that, I let him move back home. He should have never moved back home.
right.
Um, what ultimately led to we were separated a second time, and he never came back home because he choked one of our children to the point of blackout. And none of us felt safe now. Like now we have, yes, he had been physically violent toward them, but nothing that extreme. And so I said, "You need to move out and you're not coming home until you've gotten really significant help. Therapy, anger management, whatever it takes, you're not coming back home." And he never did. He never came back home. He did go to therapy, and the all therapy did for him was gave him the verbiage to make it sound like he was doing the work, but he actually wasn't doing the work because he told me in 2020 that he had made an agreement with his therapist that if he looked at pornography within 24 hours, he would tell his therapist and he would tell me. Well, a year later, he said something, and I said, "Are you still looking at pornography?" And he said, "Yeah, I have been this entire." I said, "Well, what about the agreement that you made with your therapist that you would tell him and I within 24 hours?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I've been looking at it this entire time. And I didn't tell you because you said you would divorce me if I told you." And then he says, "Are you going to divorce me?" And I was just like, um,
Yeah.
like, really? Are you going to ask that question? But we had some things going on. And so I put him off, and I did end up filing for divorce in August of 2021.
Wow. Were you shunned from the community then? Or were they respecting you?
When the second separation happened, I had a lot more support. I had been very intentional about building a support system around my children and I. So I had a lot more support. Um, I also called my family and said, "Okay, this is what's been happening in my home." They didn't know the extent, and there's still some in my family that don't know the extent of what I lived with in my marriage. Namely my dad, because my dad already doesn't come to visit me because he doesn't want to run into my former spouse.
Hmm.
And we keep telling him he's not worth it. He's not worth it. But
Right.
I also understand I'm his daughter.
Yeah.
Um, so my family, I called them and I said, okay, I'm going to divorce my husband. And they said, we support you.
Yeah.
And even today, like this morning, I was talking to my family and I don't remember what we were talking about. And my mother said something and I said something back and she goes, well, I never knew that. So there's still things that my family doesn't know.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of healing. So what have you done in order to really start a healing process for you and your family?
Yes, lots of healing. And can I just say, if you're a mother and you've ever been in this situation, or you're currently in this kind of situation where maybe you suspect, maybe you know that your husband is cheating, don't focus on him. Focus on yourself because when you heal yourself, it trickles down to your children. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Um, so I really focused on myself. I really focused on healing myself through several different things. Splankna, which is a energy healing. It's faith-based. So it uses, I call it focused spiritual warfare. It uses muscle testing. So you're asking the subconscious, also the Holy Spirit is present, and you just ask what needs to be healed, and then you go to work on that. I use that. I also use something called the emotion code. And there's a book called the Emotion Code. You can buy that book and it literally tells you exactly what to do. So I use that and do that on myself. Um, I've been to therapy. I've done cognitive processing therapy for PTSD. I've done EMDR for PTSD.
Wow.
EMDR, the EMDR that I didn't know it when I got my appointment with the therapist, but she actually specialized in sexual abuse. So
Wow.
that was really cool. I didn't even realize it. And here she does. So EMDR, I loved EMDR. Let's see, what else? I know that sounds like a lot, but you have to understand that this has been over almost 6 years. So it's not been.
Yeah. And what do you do now?
Now I continue to do emotion code and Splankna. I'm no longer in therapy. I do a lot of journaling. Journaling has been, I have 4 or 5 notebooks. Journaling has been huge in my healing. Um, I have this analogy or word picture that in our heads, it's dark. So your thoughts, they're all in your head where it is dark. And when we get our thoughts out of our dark head and onto paper or spoken, they're being exposed to the light where they now have lost their power
Yeah.
because light takes away the darkness, right? So
Yes.
the thoughts in your head lose their power when you expose them to light. So journaling has been huge for me.
So have you been able to date anyone now? Have you like even put yourself out there after this kind of experience?
Well, I'll be honest. For a long time, I would look at men and I would think, all men do this. All
Yeah.
men look at pornography. All men are just ick. But again, I worked through that, lots of journaling on that, and I came to realize that not all men are that way. So yes, I've had a pretty serious relationship since my marriage. Um, that has ended. But what I discovered is there are some things that can only be healed in relationship.
Yeah.
So then I had another, it wasn't, we didn't date, but we talked extensively before we decided to not actually date each other. Um, but I will say, can I just share this? One thing that I do now when there's someone that is interested in me and I'm interested in them, the very first thing I do, whether it's on the first date or before we have the first date, is I ask some questions. So I point blank ask them, do you look at pornography? And then I watch their body language. I listen to their voice and how they respond. And I listen to their voice inflections. And it's very telling.
Yeah. So, with this day and age, with cell phones and YouTube, I know it's very easy, and a lot of children are exposed very young ages to this kind of stuff. And I know that I have a lot of girlfriends. They watch porn with their husbands in the bedroom, right? And so I think we definitely have to emphasize that we're talking about sex addiction and using sex as an abuse and using pornography as an abuse. There's a place and a room and a space for everything. And, if it fits in your relationship and your marriage. So you just have to be aware. I feel like most men have probably watched pornography. It's how they're doing it now and what kind of void it's filling for them. That's where the questionable, comes in.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting the science that's coming out about pornography and how it shapes the view of women and how it shapes the view of healthy sexuality.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the only image that we have. We don't
Mhm.
have the image of a couple coming together in total love,
Right.
right? There's all these expectations that it creates. So it definitely has a very negative aspect on a lot of people and places. And with my kids, I had to be very blunt. I remember I was doing a class as a teacher, and they were telling us all the things kids are going to be exposed to before the age of 9. Even if they don't have a device, it's enough for their friend to have a device, right? And so there has to be such an open communication in terms of what exactly it is that you may be seeing, what how it's going to affect you, what is coming up for you, right? We have to be on it all the time as parents, for sure.
Yeah. We have to start those conversations at very young ages.
Very young age, I agree. And I'm so honored that you took your time to come here and share your story. I know it's probably not easy to do, but I really believe that if any one of our listeners is going through anything like this or similar or knows about somebody, now they have the verbiage. Now they know there's tools. Now they know they're not alone. And sometimes we're afraid. We're too comfortable in what the mess we've created, and we think there's no outlet. And for you to go, against the church, against everything, and step into your truth is so powerful and so strong that you actually chose you. And look what an amazing voice you are for those women now. So I'm so grateful for that and for you for coming here.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. So if you guys want to contact Beth in any way, if you have questions or you want to share your story with her and see what kind of resources she can help you with, we have her links in the podcast notes. I hope this was a contribution for you. It's a little different tone, but in high hopes that whatever it is that you're dealing with right now, there's always a way out. There's always somebody that's been there and done that, and they're here to tell the story. So you can be that person to tell that story. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.